The recovering forest of Terokkar is what was left of the once vibrant Maladaar forest. Known for their alemba trees and the mana oil they produced, Terokkar was home to the refuge city Shattrath and the sacred resting place of the Draenei dead, Akundun. The expedition naturally maintained a strong presence here, though when Earthbinder Tavgren returned from a survey mission to the Bone Wastes, he found all but one of his fellows dead, and a sickly, cancerous mist enveloping the entire thicket. Tavgren and the expedition undertook an extensive inquiry into this mystery, beginning with a dead Broken and an odd device. The Broken was of the Wrecked clan, which had ties to Shattrath and regularly did business with the ethereal wind trader Lathrai. Both were responsible for smuggling certain engineering supplies through Turim, which in turn was operating with the Bone Chewer Fell Orcs, a remnant of the Fell Horde. The Bone Chewer were under the direct command of the Blood Elves of Firewing Point, who were operating under the auspices of Pethelion the Calculator. The Firewing had used the thicket as a test bed for their new weapon, the Mana Bomb. This was a fairly new concept and horrific in its execution, for it would not simply detonate and do damage, but would infuse raw fell and arcane energy into everything in its radius. That much pure magic, drawn directly from the Nether, had unpredictable and horrific effects on living beings. Firewing was put to the torch, and its troops slaughtered. To tell the tale of Akundun is a story of two people, Exarch Maladaar, the Keeper of the Dead, and the Shadow Council member Terokkar Gorefiend. Many years ago, the Shadow Council staged an assault on Akundun, the sacred temple and resting place of the dead Draenei, only to run into the resistance of those self-same dead spirits, bolstering Maladaar's forces. In their desperation, the Shadow Council sought to summon a demon, any demon, but instead summoned Murmur. Murmur is an exceptionally dangerous extraplanar sound elemental. If one recalls the fate of the Red Ridge Mountains some centuries ago back on Azeroth, one can guess how summoning of this elemental lord went. All of this is decades past, however. In the here and now, the lower city of Shattrath has become a haven for refugees and the displaced, and as a result of its free-flow nature, contains both the genuinely innocent and the devious saboteurs. Through this, representatives of the lower city discover that the Shadow Council still has some scattered forces left on Outland, which are operating in the Grangelvar ruins. Hunting down and destroying these forces, they discover that the Council is seeking to use the recently reopened Dark Portal's timely arrival to begin new operations, centered around their stronghold, the Shadow Labyrinth, deep within the ruins of Akundun. Efforts were spearheaded by Field Commander Mafoon and their Orcish spy Griktha, and bolstered by Horde and Alliance adventurers. Ambassador Helma is one of the acolytes of pain and savors the exact moment of death. The more terrified they die, the sweeter the taste. Thus, the Shadow Council must continually supply him with new prisoners, lest they lose control of their servant. Blackheart the Inciter, one of the more insidious of the two-headed ogres, had deliberately stayed behind during the Second War to practice his craft of mind control on the helpless dead. Grandmaster Vorpal, though ostensibly a warlock in service of the Shadow Council, in truth serves a darker power, and seeks to further his connection to the Void. And at the end is Murmur itself. Weakened and destabilized by both botched summoning and flailing attempts to contain it, the adventurers are able to banish Murmur back to whence it came. Naturally, Gorefiend was not present, as he had been killed years prior by Turellian at the steps of the Black Temple. For the other side, the Exarchs were the supreme council of Draenei forces under Velen, each one tasked with a specific and sacred labor necessary to their society. Exarch Maladaar's was the shepherding and caring of the dead. This required a great deal of compassion and care from the gentle man, which broke him, as so many losses mounted up amongst both living and dead. Maladaar sought to blindly preserve those dead that remain by binding them into an amalgam abomination, Shirak, the Dead Watcher, a foul necromantic construct that seeks constantly to consume both magic and the living. Maladaar himself would assault the adventurers seeking to put a stop to his rituals and, through death, was cleansed of his pain, knowing only gratitude upon his passing. It was discovered that much of the void energies powering Maladaar's rituals came from the recovered Naru d'Ore. You see, as they die, Naru slowly become creatures of void, but upon said passing slowly regenerate to rebirth themselves back into their pure light forms. With Maladaar's removal, Daore was able to finally manifest and rejoin his Naru brethren. To discuss the ethereals in totality would take some time, so, in brief. Once natives to Karesh under the Nexus King Salhadar, their world was consumed by Dementius the All-Devouring, and in the process, the surviving members were forever transformed into magic-infused souls, bereft of physical form. Ethereals often bind their souls to materials to strengthen their ability to interact with the worlds around them, and are brilliantly advanced in both magic and technology. The survivors split into different political companies, such as the Consortium or the Protectorate, and seek to profit off of the backs of their considerable expertise. Nexus Prince Shafar himself had spent considerable effort on infiltrating the Monotombs during the adventurer's escapades, though sadly this drew the attention of his far more savvy rival, Nexus Prince Haramad, leader of the Consortium. The Consortium hired the services of the adventurers to deal with Shafar, and why not? We're already here after all. Pandemonius was one of Dementius's lieutenants, bound by Shafar as something of an initial defense specifically designed to prevent ethereal incursion. Tavarok was one of the leftovers of Pathelian's Colossi project, though control over the beast was broken by the tremendous void energies flowing through the tombs. As for Shafar himself, he soon realized how badly he had miscalculated. Having already committed himself to succeed or die trying, he successfully died trying. With the ethereal invasion quiet, another issue had to be dealt with: the Arakkoa. The Arakkoa venerated an old legend of theirs, the Talon King Terokkar. Terokkar is a complicated figure we will discuss in full later, but his fate is tied to the fate of all Arakkoa, the Curse of Seath. Seath was one of 3 Loa of the Arakkoa, alongside Anzu and Rukmar. Seath coveted the flight and warmth Rukmar enjoyed, and the two came to blows, with Seath losing. In his dying gasps, Seath cursed the blood to forever drain both warmth and flight from those who touched it, leading to the Sethek Hollow. In time, the political elite of the Arakkoa began to use the Sethek Hollow as punishment, condemning any who questioned doctrine with flightlessness and madness, something they would regret later when the demonic horde came and overtook them, dragging all the surviving Arakkoa elites into the Hollow to be cursed as well. Icus believed himself the reincarnation of Terokkar, although this was untrue as Terokkar's spirit actually resided within Skedis. But Icus was charismatic enough in his own right to rally the greater bulk of the remaining Arakkoa into his own followers within the Sethek Halls. Darkweaver Scythe was an unusual Arakkoa in that he focused almost entirely on elemental control, and he happened to be keeping his sister hostage, which put him in the crosshairs of his brother. Sadly, while Icus was good in the charisma camp, he was lacking in literally every other way. Icus was, and I quote, an insect tumbling in the breeze who thinks himself soaring, and as you might imagine for such a pathetic specimen, he didn't give the adventurers much trouble. With the cult of Sethek crushed, the Shatari Skyguard forces recommitted to clearing the nearby Skedis of what Arakkoa forces remained, those loyal to Terokkar himself. Thanks in part to Hazak, Terokkar was summoned prematurely and permanently slain. With the Arakkoa no longer a player on the board, the Shadow Council severely weakened, and good relationships built with both the Lower City and the Consortium, the extended Horde and Alliance expedition began the journey west into Nagrand.